Now, I talked on the Sunday Showdown last night about these reports that the Melbourne Storm and the NRL had scrapped welcomes to country from their home games. Now, this was a report in the Sunday Herald Sun, and I said last night it was proof that people have finally woken up. We've had enough of this performative virtue signalling that actually divides us. And funnily enough, it was popular with other NRL club bosses. One was quoted in the paper saying, "Good on Melbourne Storm. The Storm are located in the heartland of the AFL, who are so woke." Melbourne probably felt they had to do it at every game when they didn't. I mean, heck, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Finally, a bit of common sense out of these sporting leagues. But I had to laugh today because the Storm, of course, have since come out to clarify what's actually happening here. Now, yes, they are cutting back on welcomes to country. Good on them, fair enough. They'll do about 3 a year. But they're also doing some sort of cultural planning review for next year, which will consider, and I'm not joking here, having acknowledgments not just for Indigenous people, but people from Tonga, Samoa, Fiji and New Zealand. And for the Kiwis, there might even be a haka. I mean, for heaven's sake. Joining me now, Nick Cater from the Menzies Research Centre, and on the desk here, Sky News contributor Louise Roberts. Nick, I'll start with you. I mean, look, I'm glad that they're winding back the welcomes to country, but seriously, are we now going to have acknowledgements for Tongans, for Kiwis, for Samoans? I mean, why don't we just read out every country in the world before NRL matches?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? They're trying to wean themselves off woke. They're trying to go cold turkey, but finding it difficult. So they think, well, we'll just have a little bit of woke just to guide us through. No, you really just have to say no to the lot and recognise that the diversity, equity and inclusion narrative is just the old revolutionary new left narrative from the 1960s in a slightly more palatable form. This thing has got a terrible intellectual history, and what it does, of course, is employ thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people, you know, administering diversity. So they're not going to let go of this under any circumstance, which I guess they've been putting the pressure on the Melbourne Storm, and why the Melbourne Storm now seem to be winding back. I'd advise them not to. I have a hunch, I haven't done the survey, but I have a hunch that 99% of Melbourne Storm fans are sick of welcome to country and just want to get on with the game.
Well, I trust your polling a bit more than some of the others I read sometimes, Nick. But I think what this actually exposes, and I'll give them the credit that they're winding back the welcomes to country. That is a good thing. But I think what it exposes, the idea that you're going to have these acknowledgements for all these different cultures, is just how ridiculous the acknowledgement to country, as it's applied in almost every circumstance now, was in the first place. Because now we're saying, oh, well, you know, there are actually lots of other cultures that are contributing to our game and our country, etc. And surely they are also deserving of recognition. And once you start to recognise everyone as though they were special, you start to realise that no one is special.
That's right. So the inclusion play didn't really quite work, did it? And I think there's a lot of fatigue as well, as Nick says, in the sporting arena for these types of things being shoved down the throats of players and spectators and so forth. But I do commend Storm for actually trying to do something. They haven't just gone along with the cookie cutter approach, what every other club has done, which is very prevalent, of course, in the AFL in Victoria. So if they can find something which is a sweet spot between the fans and the spectators and the players, then good on them. But at least they're doing something. They're not just going with the flow. Yes,
well, let's hope they adopt a bit of common sense in this review that they're doing. Now, there was a protest against anti-Semitism in Sydney yesterday that came off the back, of course, of the synagogue in Melbourne being firebombed. It was obviously a spate of anti-Semitic graffiti in Sydney. But Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong, they had their names read out at various points during this protest, and it was met with booing, Nick. No great surprise, I wouldn't have thought. I must say I've been amused over the last week to see Albanese and Jacinta Allen down in Victoria, etc., coming out, and it's almost like they've just realised that we have a problem with anti-Semitism in this country. Oh! Where could it have come from? Well, it's their lack of leadership that has led to this, and they're now trying to put themselves forward as though they are going to be the solution.
Yeah. I'd like to think that we treat our Prime Minister with respect and we don't boo him, whatever we think of him. But look, I totally understand their feelings. Anthony Albanese is 14 months too late in coming to recognise the damage that anti-Semitism is doing. And of course, it's been allowed to flourish and grow and perpetuate throughout the community. I mean, I heard only today of a junior girl in a junior girls soccer team getting accused of being a dirty Jew by the opposition on the soccer pitch. It's just heartbreaking. Anthony Albanese has left this too late, and just as he appeared to be getting it last week, then Penny Wong agrees to this deal at the United Nations, which is basically, thumbs up to Hamas. Go your hardest, guys. We're going to give you an unconditional ceasefire, even though you haven't released the hostages, even though you won't lay down your arms. From the start, it was a simple case. You either are 100% behind Israel and the Jewish community, or you're not behind them. You can't be hedging your bets. And I'm afraid Anthony Albanese has been doing that and is still doing that.
Yeah, and he's trying to make up for it 100 miles an hour, Louise, but I don't think it's working. Well, clearly, by the sentiment of the protest yesterday, it's certainly not working. No,
and two things. I think if Bob Hawke were alive, he'd be horrified by the lack of support, I think, from our Labor PM towards that very special community for all of us. And I think from the Jewish Australian community, the visceral anger was so evident in that protest. Although it was a peaceful protest, 3,000 of them, they were making comments along the lines of, we've reached a tipping point. We no longer have any resilience. Anti-Semitism isn't some sort of vague threat. It is here. It's fully imported into Australian society. Meanwhile, we have a PM who's focused on getting 5 convicted drug smugglers back from Indonesia.
Precisely. I've talked about the top of the show. I still can't believe it. But that's where the priorities of this government are at. I mean, there's so many things in front of them that they have just ignored for so long, and then, Johnny come lately and expect that they're going to be taken seriously for it. You can't be surprised by the reaction. Now, City of Sydney Councillor Matthew Thompson is pushing for the council to drop the opening prayer for monthly council meetings. This is hoary old chestnut, eh? Thompson says, "We're a council, not a church, and the current prayer doesn't reflect our community and the broad diversity of views that are held." Now, look, Nick, it probably doesn't much matter to me whether they have a prayer before the council meeting or not. I just want them to run the council effectively. But they probably should have a prayer. And the prayer they do at the moment is all about how, we will deliver good governance for the people of Sydney. All this. Get rid of that. They should be doing a prayer for the ratepayers of Sydney, and every other council should be doing the same, to say, my God, you people, we take all your money and we're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think a prayer is a very good idea. Perhaps a Lord's Prayer. Perhaps they could start by recognising and forgive us our trespasses. Like my local council here is doing a lot of those right now, spending a lot of my money and putting the rates up. Have a bit of humility. Look, this is crazy, but they have a new prayer now, of course, which is the Welcome to Country prayer, which is the new religion. It's all part of the new woke religion. So they think they can do away with the greatest religion that's ever been invented and has been around for 2,000 years, still sustaining people today through suffering and difficulty and bringing a touch of humility. That's the great thing that Christianity does for me. It humbles you. You realise you're not the centre of the universe. So perhaps they should think again about abandoning prayers before the council.
Yeah, well, councillor and humble are two words that don't normally go together, Louise, and that is perhaps the problem here. You couldn't have anyone above the council, could you?
Oh, God, no. But it was very interesting that Clover Moore is, in fact, not in favour of removing the prayer. So we'll have to see what happens tonight when they vote on the matter before it goes to the ubiquitous community consultation. But I think getting rid of a prayer overall is a garbage idea. And in fact, the only garbage that this newly elected councillor should be tackling is the state of the bins in the City of Sydney. That's what he should be focused on.
Very good. Now, before we go, how good is this one? Former AFL star Severio Rocker, he played 257 games for Collingwood and North Melbourne. He then went over to the US to play in the NFL for 6 years. He's chased down a thief at Northland Shopping Centre in Melbourne. Now, he saw some bloke having a scuffle with a worker in a clothing shop, and they took off with a bundle of gear. And he told the Herald Sun, "I started chasing him and I was running out the door yelling a few F words. And I said, if I catch up with you, I'll fix you up." He decided to drop all the clothes and said, "All right." I mean, imagine robbing a place, Nick, and you look up and you see a 6'5", 120 kilo full forward who kicked 748 goals coming at you.
748. Did you say he played 257 games?
Correct.
He's just played his finest game. He's just played his finest game.
I agree.
What a great example for the rest of the community.
Yes.
We need more have-a-go heroes. We need more people that'll step up and put these idiots and these thieves in their place.
Too right. We've only got 15 seconds, Louise. But I just hope this means more people will actually take care of the community around them.
Well, exactly. I mean, as Nick said, a have-a-go hero is fabulous, especially at Christmas. Also, Rocco got a 40% discount on his trainers.
As well.
Good on him.
As well he should. Louise Roberts, Nick Cater, thank you so much for your time.